Welcome to Denver Startup Week. I'm Tammy Dorr, President and CEO of the Downtown Denver Partnership and co-chair of Denver Startup Week. This year marks the 10-year anniversary of Denver Startup Week. DSW has been the catalyst for lots of change over the past decade. And this week, we're coming together to celebrate the past and dream big for the future. We are able to bring Denver Startup Week to this community thanks to our 2021 sponsors. Thank you to our HQ and title sponsor, Amazon, and our title sponsors whose leadership makes this week come to life. Capital One Cafe, Downtown Denver Partnership, Fluid Truck, Hotel Engine, and WeWork. And our track sponsors who have made all of the great content you're hearing today possible, our founder track sponsor, Kickstart, growth track sponsor, Friday Health Plans, developer track sponsor, Quizlet, product track sponsor, Palantir, our designer track sponsor, Battery 621, and the Public Works, people track sponsor, Exactly, and spotlight event sponsor, Strat Labs. Our headline event sponsors are bringing the excitement to the week. Thank you to B-Side Fund, Colorado Public Radio, Comcast, Coors Brewing, Denver Pavilions, Entrepreneurship at the University of Denver, JP Morgan Chase, Method, Moss Adams, Pi Insurance, Promontory Mortgage, Path, Southwest, Tattered Cover, and VF Venture Foundry. Finally, thank you to our partner and member sponsors, all listed on the screen. Please say thank you to these companies as you enjoy our hybrid Denver Startup Week. And don't forget, use the hashtag DenStartupWeek to share your experiences and moments of inspiration on social media. Have a great week.
Hello, I'm Sal Gentili, CEO of Friday Health Plans, and we're proud to sponsor the growth track this year at Denver Startup Week. We're a company that just entered a rapid growth phase, so we felt it was particularly appropriate. When my business partner and I started Friday Health Plans 5 years ago, we knew we wanted to create a company that catered to people who bought their own health insurance. The Affordable Care Act was just getting going, and we saw an opportunity to serve a brand new market of health insurance consumers. Independent consultants, startup groups, gig workers, service industry workers, designers, creators, and other independent professionals, like many of you here today. We knew that if we built a health plan that was simple to buy, easy to use, had great customer service, and most of all was affordable, we could compete against the big insurance plans who only focus on serving big companies. After spending 5 years getting into the Colorado market and completing a successful proof of concept, we successfully closed a $50 million round of growth funding earlier this year. We're now about to expand to 3 additional states later this year, hire more than 400 employees to support our growth, and eventually be in more than 10 states by 2025. I wish each of you good luck in your startup and growth pursuits. And as you think about your upcoming health insurance needs, I hope you consider fellow growing startup Friday Health Plans. Open enrollment starts November 1st. Check us out at fridayhealthplans.com.
Hello everyone, welcome to Denver Startup Week. I'm Jake Cohen, the Growth Track Chair and member of the Denver Startup Week Organizing Committee. Thank you for joining us for the 10th anniversary of Denver Startup Week. At Denver Startup Week, we strive to make all of our sessions a space where attendees can connect, learn, and grow. Regardless of age, gender identity, gender expression, race, ability, or sexual orientation. A special thank you to our sponsors for their support in helping us to keep Denver Startup Week free and accessible for all. Thank you for joining us and have a great week.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to our panel discussion this morning titled Not Your Pappy's CPG Company, the Evolution of CPG and Why You Might Be Falling Behind. My name is Charlie Warden. I'll be our moderator this morning, and I'm joined by 4 wonderful panelists. Before I dive in and introduce our panelists, I just wanted to start off this morning by setting the stage with a few housekeeping items. First and foremost, this session will be recorded and made available once the week concludes. In addition, any useful resources or links or items that might come up during today's discussion, I'll make sure those become available as well. Please feel free to use the chat feature down at the bottom of your Zoom window here for general conversations and shout outs, but I will be monitoring the Q&A tool for any questions you'd like to point specifically at any of our panelists. As for an agenda, I'll introduce our panelists really quickly, and then I'll set the stage, followed by 30 to 35 minutes of a panel discussion. And then I'll make sure we have a good 10 to 15 minutes for Q&A at the end. All right, so without further ado, I'm gonna go ahead and introduce our panelists. First, we have Mary Grothe. Mary is a former top sales rep who, after selling millions and breaking records, founded House of Revenue, a Denver-based firm of fractional revenue leaders who help scale second stage growth companies between 2 and 20 million by reworking their brand, marketing, sales, customer success, and revenue operations. Next, we have Les Burch. Les is a native of Colorado and a graduate of the Colorado School of Mines. Les is currently the CEO at Sashco, a family-owned manufacturing company specializing in high-end caulk and sealant. Sashco has seen great success working with and selling into retailers such as Ace Hardware and Lowe's. Les truly is the epitome of not running your Pappy CPG company, as he's been instrumental in making sure Sashco continues to evolve and really be a trendsetter in the CPG space. Christine's our resident inbound marketing guru. Christine's superpower is building inbound marketing infrastructure that's ready to scale, it's repeatable and automated, all while maintaining a super focus on the customer experience. Over the past year alone, Christine has helped one CPG company increase their average monthly inbound leads by more than 300%. And she helped another company rank in the top 20 of Google search for over 180 target keywords. That very same company was able to close over $750,000 in inbound marketing lead revenue in Q1 of 2021 alone. Christine is currently the VP of Marketing at House of Revenue. Last, but certainly not least, we have Brad Hendrickson. Brad has spent the past decade immersed in all things CPG sales and marketing. He's held vice president and officer level positions at national product placement firms and creative agencies. He's worked with most major retail chains and launched go-to-market or hyper-growth programs for national brands, including Jack Daniels, Anne Klein, Skinny Girl, 5 Hour Energy, and Anheuser-Busch InBev. Brad's been fortunate to be a part of the exciting evolution of the CPG space and to watch firsthand what it really takes to be a successful brand in the current digital-centric retail landscape. Brad is currently the CRO at House of Revenue, and he's responsible for all client go-to-market and brand strategies. All right, so before we dive into panel discussion, I just wanted to kind of reset the stage about why we're here today. The world of CPG, as we all know, has evolved greatly over the past 30 years. Consumer purchase decisions have shifted. Buyers now scour hashtags. They spend hours reading and watching reviews online, and they consult search engines to get themselves further down the sales funnel than ever before. It's more important than ever to build a brand that establishes credibility and trust with your consumers before they likely ever meet a member of your team and have a conversation. Today, we're going to discuss some of the biggest changes in all facets of the CPG revenue engine, strategies for building a winning brand, and some top advice for folks that might be newer to the CPG space or looking to evolve their business. All right. Let's dive right in because everyone is sick of hearing me talk and wants to hear from the panelists. The first question I have queued up this morning, I'd love to point in Les's direction. So Les, what are the top 3 advancements or biggest shifts that you've seen in the CPG space over the past several decades?
Yeah, thanks, Charlie. Yeah, stretch my mind going back several decades, but it's kind of an easy answer. And it has been this movement to clear packaging. So a little over 30 years ago, our company introduced an innovation, which was a clear sealant in a clear cartridge. So you could see right through it. And at the time, now we participate in the hardware channel, but at the time we looked at hardware, we looked at grocery. We only found one other product on the market that had a clear product in a clear package, and that was Future Floor Wax. So today, though, let's fast forward. Clear packaging is really a dominant force. Why is that? People want to know what they're buying. There's great transparency. It means you're not hiding anything as a manufacturer. And it also speaks to the purity of your product. So I think that's why it's been such an increasing trend. The next one is, and I'm going to stay with packaging, is that packaging these days is as important as the product itself. And that's just not the pretty design. We'll get to that later maybe. But we're all used to user interface and how important that is in web navigation. And don't make them do an extra click. We're down to the details. Well, it's as important in physical products and how to use them. So a user interface and how to use the product is huge. And just a couple examples, easy come to mind. We're all familiar with ketchup bottles or even shampoo bottles that are now marketed upside down. The cap's on the bottom. Why? You can avoid 3 seconds worth of shaking the fluid down the bottom. Now, when you think about that, the consumer is making a choice to save 3 seconds. And I'm not any different. I'm very reticent to buy a shampoo that doesn't have a flat lid that I can't turn upside down. I mean, there's a shampoo I really like, but it has this round lid. I don't want to buy it. I'm saving my 3 seconds every morning. Another great example is we're all familiar with the laundry detergent that has a cap on it, and you could measure the stuff with the cap on the bottle. Great. Well, when you put the cap back on, the crud drips all over the bottle. Well, about 10 years ago, the innovation came out. Hey, now when you put the cap back on the bottle, it actually drips back down inside the bottle. So that shows how important that user interface is. And the third trend is that brands are sold with personality. That's a new deal. It used to be product first. It's now personality, and that gives small companies an advantage in the market. Folks like Dollar Shave Club and Sheets and Giggles have more credible personality than larger companies. That's great. That opens up a big window to small companies. But just remember, it hasn't escaped large companies. Did anybody ever think they would see humorous commercials from insurance companies and banks? Never.
That's awesome. I love the call out of physical experience when it comes to UX. I feel like we skip right over that in this day and age, and UX just means digital experience. So I love some of those examples about how hardware experience can make such a difference. I'd love to point the same question at you, Brad, maybe specifically changes you've seen over the last, let's call it 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I can speak to about the last decade of things that I've noticed. I think the biggest shift that everybody can recognize, and it's no secret, is the shift to direct to consumer. At this point, brands have a direct sales line to customers that in the past would have never been able to potentially even trial the product, because a brand having that national distribution was unlikely, and it was unlikely that a consumer would actually be able to find that product. Direct to consumer now just allows brands to have a super personal relationship with their customers. And truly, and I find this to be even more important in the process, it allows them to acquire sales data that actually can make compelling pitches when going direct to sell into a retailer. Another thing off the top of my head is just now the supply chain efficiency. Customers now expect immediate gratification. And this is both when ordering a product online or buying something in the store. You guys have probably noticed supply chain has gone from 5 to 7 day shipping, and now it's about 1 day or even same day shipping with brands that have a national footprint. Retailers honestly have created a cutting edge supply chain that ensures product is always on the shelf. And customers honestly are never going to be disappointed when they go to a store and can't find a product that they're looking for. The last thing that has been a huge major shift is the focus on private label. And frankly, it's been scary because every single brand now has a new competitor. As if shelf space wasn't already competitive enough, and now retail brands are owning and taking over this new shelf space. And the crazy thing is, private label was always known for being a cheaper option, which meant that product quality normally suffered. Now retailers are super focused on high quality product label. You look at the Kirkland brand at Costco, and in most people's minds, that's somewhat of a semi-premium brand. And these brands now want to also build their own brand equity. So those three things to me stand at top of mind.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Something I've heard now a couple times already in both of those answers is brand personality. So I'd like to touch specifically on brand. And this question I think is best for Christine. Specific to product branding and marketing, what are some tactics that work best knowing today's market and with today's buyer?
Yeah, so with today's market, it's imperative to understand both what your buyer needs, but also how to communicate that to the buyer, why your product even matters. So there's a few things at play here. So first, and my clients hear me say this all the time, you really want to take the time to truly understand their pain points. So specifically, which of their pain points are driving them to your product. Because one, if you aren't solving a problem for them or making their lives better in some way, then why would they even buy from you? And two, if you can empathize with their pain, then you can help them understand the solution that you're offering. The second tactic we need to look at is that communication. So you need to be able to communicate to the customer why your product should matter to them. That means being able to use brief messaging, ideally in today's world, to be able to sum up all of the above that we just mentioned in a way that they can understand. So that means leaving out any internal lingo. You know, if you have special names for your products or your services that your customers are going to read and not know what they are, that's probably not going to help your case. And same with avoiding highly technical language, unless you have a highly technical consumer. So Less, for example, has pretty technical consumers. So it makes sense for Sashco to use technical messaging. A lot of brands, that might not be the case. You really need to meet them where they're at and use their language. And then lastly, and this is an art form that I'd like you all to develop, and that is the art of knowing and then being able to communicate why your product is different from the competition. So that means you need to know your value proposition, and you need to know your competitors' value propositions, and you need to know where your competition is weak and what they might be missing. And lastly, once you know your competitive edge, you need to be able to communicate to the consumer why that competitive edge really matters to them.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Les, I'd love to hear your perspective on this question, going back to your initial answer on personality. So what are some tactics you've seen be successful, Les, in this market?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks to Christine for really pushing us into a much more granular understanding of our end user. So that's been great, but I do want to go back to personality because it is huge, and we just learn the different things every day. So if you're listening to this, check out a YouTube channel called Perkins Builder Brothers. These are two brothers we met. They are custom home builders. And they build 2 homes per year. That's all they want to build. They're craftsmen to the nth degree. And so why do they have this channel? Well, their channel has over 300,000 subscribers. Each of their videos gets upwards of 1 million viewers per video. So, and it's hard to believe, they take all the video with their own phones. We think we have to have these big fancy cameras. No, they're using their phones. They edit themselves. So really, I mean, the lesson is here, videos become king. And obviously social media is huge. So you have to follow your customers to their platform of choice. That's one of the things you have to learn about them. So our customers, we talk to remodelers. Yeah, they're on YouTube, but they're also big on Facebook. So if you thought people moved from that to something, well, our remodelers didn't. So, and since we're talking about CPG, you need to pay attention to your channel. So retailers and distributors are a tougher bunch than end users to catch, because purchasing agents aren't sitting there trying to search out, oh, I wish I could see the new product. Little of that, but you got to go catch them. Well, the best way to do it really is if you can get their end user into their stores, they'll respond. And then around this personality is the second biggest deal is just be who you are. Be authentic. That's huge. Your audience can pick up a phony in 10 seconds.
That's great. I have a feeling we're going to dive into that, how to build the end user following a little bit later in this conversation. Awesome answers, both of you. Now I want to shift the focus to a holistic mindset. This is a perfect question for Mary. Mary's the queen of holistic revenue. So Mary, in the CPG space, how do these companies in today's market build that holistic revenue strategy and then execute on that strategy to ensure they have high conversion rates throughout their funnel and as low a CAC or cost to acquire customers as possible?
I'm going to give you a two-part answer. The first one will be a little bit more textbook on what is the methodology, and I'm going to cut in a specific example from one of the first clients that we ever had a privilege to work with. They were in the CPG space. So achieving scale, it requires your revenue engine to run synergistically. It means that sales, marketing, and revenue operations, the teams have to share the same vision, strategy, and execution plan. You cannot run in silos with department heads with their own agenda and their own plan and their own way of getting things done. It'll be fragmented to the customer and you're going to be exposed. So first, marketing your product strategically. We've talked about this heavily already today, but you have to focus on digital and physical traffic, omni-channel strategy, social media, customer input. When you're talking about sales, the sales department must have a clear and purposeful understanding of who they're selling to, really just expanding from what Christine was saying of understanding that buyer. They need to know where they're selling, why those channels were chosen, how their sales efforts are being supported by the marketing team, again, speaking to how they need to work in tandem. The sales team has to focus on a defined target audience, strategically positioning their product as a solution for the customer challenge. And this is an extension from that brand strategy, an extension from that brand personality. The sales team has to carry out the same message. It can't be a completely different experience from the consumer engaging with the brand and the marketing funnel, and then they engage sales and it falls flat, or they're just not understanding how the product solves their problem, makes their life better, how it's differentiated in the market. If sales is falling flat, you're going to lose conversion and it's going to drive up your client acquisition costs. So briefly here, one of our very first clients that we had the privilege of working with, they are a manufacturer of wine racks, and their company had direct consumer. You could buy the product online, you could buy it through Amazon, but it was a bit of a technical sale because even though it was a modular wine racking system for those that were building a new home, or maybe you had a new restaurant, you needed a CAD drawing or you needed your architect to spec it in. It got a little complex depending on the build out. So yes, consumer could just buy it online, buy it through Amazon or buy it through a dealer, but they had an inside sales team that when we first got the experience to work with them, you could have looked at them as more order takers. There was a complete gap between the brand and marketing strategy into how sales was communicating to the end user customer buyer, the consumer, or working through dealers and relationships through other partners that were selling the product. And then that could also not just be like an online dealer reseller, but through builders and architects and contractors, those that were speccing in this product into these builds. And there was a complete variance in the sales strategy. So even though they were quite brilliant in brand and marketing, it was a complete fall off to sales. And that's something that you have to be very mindful of if you want to have high conversion and you want to have that flawless, frictionless process in the customer experience, first touch point brand marketing through the conversion in the sales process.
Awesome. I think you touched on exactly why CPG is so exciting and so challenging. You have all of these different avenues to think about in terms of go-to-market strategy and channels and partnerships. I would be remiss if I didn't point this same question at Brad, knowing, Brad, that you are responsible for a dozen companies go-to-market and brand strategies in the CPG space at any given time. So I'd love to point this question at you.
Yeah, thank you. And a lot of my stuff may be a little redundant with Mary, but I can't be more passionate about this component. Companies absolutely need to break down silos. It's been for so long, sales and marketing have essentially functioned somewhat separately. One focused on that sales process at retail and the other focused on brand awareness, or as of recently, driving direct to consumer sales. To achieve scale, companies need to do three things, in my opinion. First is a complete departmental realignment on your go-to-market strategy. The second is you need to ensure that there's just a cohesive strategy that is syndicated throughout sales, marketing, and customer success. This needs to be from the top down into all of your key revenue departments. And lastly, and this sounds kind of silly, but many of my clients that I work with don't do this, a weekly sales and marketing sync. So often you find that there's just this big fragmentation. And frankly, the major thing that I like to change right away is the sync and just ensuring that everybody gets along. Ensuring the sales team knows that they have strong marketing support and can approach a retailer with ample marketing firepower, they have a really compelling offering to then push somebody else off the shelf and to fit their product in. If marketing knows how to support sales, they can attribute effort and spend directly to sales. This rationalizes a lot more purposeful spend and empowers the marketing team with the knowledge they need to create more impactful campaigns, presentations, enablement tools, and as we've kind of discussed today, client experiences. I mean, at the end of the day, it's imperative that you ensure you provide your customers an amazing brand experience. On your own website, you have unlimited control and opportunity to do this. At brick and mortar retail, you need to ensure that you're communicating with your buyer, both sales and marketing leads, to take advantage of what opportunities exist in store and then also on a retailers.com.
Awesome. I might keep this trend rolling with you, Brad, if that's all right. You touched on communication between marketing and sales, and I feel like everybody has experienced this friction between marketing and sales. Marketing thinks everything they do is gold. Sales, likewise, and they don't understand what marketing is doing. And we all know communication is important in any business model, but can you elaborate a little bit more on the importance of that communication between marketing and collaboration between marketing and sales in the CPG space, and maybe even pull on some experiences that you've had with clients where you've had to really shift that mindset, if you could?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, again, I mean, I cannot emphasize how critical it is to have a synergistic relationship with sales and marketing. Aside from go-to-market alignment, the efficiencies that can be created by having effective data transfer and communication channels are exponential. I mean, in a perfect world, marketing would be involved in literally every single sale, and sales would be able to then provide direct feedback and prompt feedback to marketing on how to contribute or continue to optimize, I would say, their contribution to that sales process. Retailers now expect to receive comprehensive marketing support programs during a sales meeting. If you go into a meeting with a buyer and they ask you, so what are you going to do from a marketing perspective, and you don't have an answer, you're DOA. And anybody that's going into a retail presentation needs to make sure that they're prepared in this capacity. But in order to effectively do this, sales needs to be proactive in their communication and their needs to marketing. And again, marketing needs to understand the idiosyncrasies of those specific retailers in that specific sales process to create an advantageous solution. One really great example I have of this is one of my clients, and it's a little bit of a deviation from CPG, but they handle so many CPG clients, is they're a third-party logistics company. And when I first came on board with them, they had a very fragmented sales infrastructure. And in fact, although being just shy of $100 million in annual revenue, they had one account executive that was in charge of everything. And they had one marketing coordinator. Now, those two, basically, they could have been on different planets. There was never any cohesiveness. What we did in the first 45 days is revamp that sales infrastructure. We built what I like to call a pop-up sales team. And I mean that by we hired two SDRs and 2 account executives at one time. We elevated that account executive that was currently at the company to a director level position. We did a bum rush training of all of that sales team, built out infrastructure, processes, revamped life cycle stages. And then we also hired a director of marketing that came in and brought some experience from the SaaS world. So not only bringing in those key players in regards to that infrastructure was a huge solution, but it was the processes that we instilled and making sure that the communication between those top level employees and departments was captured every single day.
Awesome. I love that example. Well, sorry, Mary, you had something to add?
I do. I know you didn't ask me, but sorry, that's my MO. I got to jump in here. So there's another example that I think I was hoping Brad would share. He said he had an example. I was like, oh, be the one, like share my brain. That example was great, Brad. But the one I'm thinking about is we have a manufacturer client in California, and they were running into supply chain, manufacturing, processing issues, machine equipment issues. And so the sales team was selling something that they didn't even have access to. And so sales was completely out of alignment with what they were saying to their customers versus what was even on the shelves and available and able to be sold. And the marketing component of that was nearly non-existent. And so it's one of those, when I hear marketing and sales alignment, I think about go to the product. What do you have in stock? Where is your supply chain currently not affected? What can you get more of? Create a specific marketing campaign around that. Train the sales team and work in tandem with the sales team, create automation around the two. Going back to the omni-channel strategy, if you have 1,000 units of one product, but you're back ordered on another, like stop running your marketing campaigns. That sounds to be very simple idea, but these are problems that we run into. And so my recommendation is not just sales and marketing alignment, but tie it back to the product. Or if you have a certain product that you have a ton of sitting on the shelf, attach a campaign to it, create a sales spiff, create a specific marketing piece for the sales team. Make sure it's on the front page of the website, have a pop-up, run paid ads to it. There are ways that you can tie that sales and marketing strategy in alignment specific to product inventory and also overcoming some of the supply chain issues that a lot of CPG manufacturers are running into right now. I'm done interrupting. Your turn.
No, thank you. I love those real world examples. And I think what you both touched on, the importance of building the infrastructure in the CPG space. I've seen it with a lot of our clients. They're off and running and they're scaling and they're scaling. And then they look back and they say, oh man, I wish we would have staffed appropriately or built the right tech stack 5 years ago, because it's a whole heck of a lot harder now at 15 million than it would have been at 2. So I love those real world examples. Thank you so much. And if anybody else wants to interrupt or ad lib, it's always welcome on this panel. Okay, so I think that's enough talking about sort of holistic and communication internally. I'd like to turn the conversation back to what we kind of touched on at the beginning, which is brand, and specifically brand loyalty, and that idea of earning the trust and almost cult following of your end users, not only to get them to purchase, but also to build credibility with retailers. So let's point this question at Christine. Christine, how do you build a loyal community around your brand, so much so that they're not just followers, but active advocates and a referral base for your brand?
Yeah. So first, let's think about the word community a little bit. And when you're thinking about community, even socially, or even caveman days, right? What do you think about when it's community? It's support system. It's there's value being provided, and there's camaraderie in a community. So, you know, if you're all around the campfire and you're sticking together, like trying to hide from a saber-toothed tiger or fight off a saber-toothed tiger, the value there is that you're a support structure for each other and you're providing each other value. Each have a different job. So how do we translate that in today's market to the brand world? Well, brands should be consistently providing value to their consumers and to their following. Even if these people aren't customers yet and they're following you on social media, you still need to think of that as a community and being able to provide them value. So when you're thinking about providing value, that's through a few different facets. So it's content. What are you putting out there? What are you putting on social media? What are you sending to their email inboxes? It's through customer support. How are you supporting the people that have already purchased your products? And then it's also through the product itself, and ideally all three of these things. So at House of Revenue, we're really strong proponents of what's called the flywheel approach. And essentially this is an evolution of the traditional lead funnel. So instead of, you know, all the leads just drop into the funnel and then they turn into a sale and then it's just done and over with, you know, everything's spilled out of the funnel at that point. Instead of just ending efforts there, we work to continually keep this flywheel spinning by continually providing value throughout the entirety of the buyer's journey. So that's before, during, and after the sale. And this can be everything from supporting a customer post-sale with resources to help them to get the most out of the product that they just bought. Or it might be offering them something like a discount link that they can share with their friends. And then each of you get 20% off. And it kind of keeps you coming back to purchase more. And it also invites somebody else into the funnel at this point. So these efforts, we call them delighting the customer. It's the delight phase after they've become a customer. And these efforts here are what can actually convert them into more of what we call a brand evangelist, which is that person that's shouting your praises from the rooftops. They're telling all their friends and their family about you. They're sharing your stuff on social media because they love your brand so much. Before you know it, you're getting referrals, you're getting all these followers on Instagram, you're Insta famous, your brand, you know, all that. You're becoming a household name. So that is how you build a community. At the end of the day, it's value.
That's great. I don't know about anybody else, but all I kept thinking of during that answer was Peloton. I've got a few cult followers shoving Peloton in my face every day, saying I need it. And that's just a testament to how powerful that brand following has become. And maybe they'll wear me down one of these days. And I'll try
I know.
it
I don't
out.
even like spinning, and I keep thinking maybe I should get a Peloton.
Okay, sorry, I digress. Les, I'd love to hear your perspective on building a loyal community, something that Sashco has done really well over the years.
Yeah, and I mean, really, we feel like we're in the initial stages of it. We're still working hard at it, but now you got that opportunity, you know, to go beyond, oh, we'd like loyal users, to now you can build these communities just because of the communication links. So I'll kind of launch off of Christine's, but you know, we tend to be pretty good at point of purchase communication. CPG has to be, but if you think of a caulking cartridge, which most people aren't thinking of caulking cartridges very often, but we got a caulking cartridge that's 1.5 inches wide. We don't have much space to tell our story. We're not like a potato chip bag. Our real estate's pretty small. So we've got to be good at point of purchase, displays, demos, and all that at the store level. And we are. So we used to have a sales rep who was like our best display salesman. That guy just like put it out there like candy. He'd sell displays to people who already had one. So he was super. So he used to say, hey, at Sashco, we've got the sizzle, but we've also got the steak. That lesson was, in view of today's market, open research, accessible reviews by users, your product absolutely has to live up to its claims. That is huge. If it does, people love to talk about the brands they love. They love to talk about the brands that work. And so it's great word of mouth. But of course, as Christine said, it's gone beyond, oh, I'm going to tell my neighbor. We can post it on social media. I'm telling 500,000 people now that I like this. So remember the Perkins brothers? How did we find them? We happened upon the video where they were featuring our product. We had no idea these people existed. There was no relationship between us, but here they are advertising our product. So, I mean, that's exciting to see a customer you don't even know selling your product. It's embarrassing when they do a better job than you do. But the problem is the reverse is true. They're also going to dog the products they don't like. So you've just got to make sure you've got the steak. When they chew into that thing, it better be doing what you say it's doing.
That's awesome. The phrase of the day, bring the sizzle and the steak. Thank you so much. Okay, I have one more question that I'd actually like to pose to each one of our panelists. And just a quick reminder, after this, I'm going to open it up for some Q&A. So any last minute questions you all have, feel free to use the Q&A tool and drop them there, and I will try to get through all of them this morning. And for any Q&A questions that we don't get to, feel free to email them to info@houseofrevenue after this session ends, and we will point you in the right direction or follow up with an answer. Okay, so my last question for all of you panelists today, and let's just round robin this. We'll start with Mary, Brad, and then Christine, and then Les will finish us out strong. It is pretty simple. What is the top piece of advice for a second stage scaling CPG company? Think of a company that has achieved their first few million in annual revenue, and they're looking for strategies to scale to that 20 million plus and scale. So let's start off with Mary.
I can narrow this down into 3 areas. Before I do that, I just have to say, Les, I absolutely love you. Your, your answers are unbelievable. And I'm so thankful that you are on this panel with us this morning. You're
Thanks.
just bringing this to life in such an amazing way, living this journey as a CPG CEO for as many years as you've been doing it. So amazing, amazing. Thank you.
Great to be here.
Thank you. All right. So my 3 points on this, and like the last words of wisdom until we go live and answering your Q&A or your questions, is number 1, as I spoke about earlier, you have to remove the silos between your revenue departments. We're huge on revenue operations. If that's a newer term to you, I would dig into it. One thing that we would define it as is the tech stack. So you can look at the technology and the operational processes that would align with your buyer's journey and then the customer journey. So the entire customer experience from the first touch point with your brand, however they're intercepting that, be it brick and mortar retail, or if it's online, if it's through social media, if it's through word of mouth with a friend, if it's through sales, whatever that first touch point is, there's a way to build your tech stack and the operational processes that will assist you in removing the barriers between the silos. You think of the word frictionless. So put yourself in the customer's shoes. Is it frictionless from the very first touch point all the way through conversion and repeat purchases? And what does that look like long term? Second is, you've heard the saying, get niche, get rich, trim down, trim down, trim down your target market to find that ideal buyer. When you find the ideal buyer, get brilliant at selling to them. And when you get brilliant at that, then you can get that customer feedback loop. You can look for product innovation. You can look at expanding into other markets, but to start with one really, really great thing and be brilliant in it, and it'll expand from there. Don't try to be too many things to too many people out of the gate with too many use cases. Just get niche, get rich. And the last part is hiring a CRO. So typically in a second stage scale, when you're emerging past a revenue plateau, a lot of CEOs say, I think we're ready for a CRO. I just want to warn you that most CROs have bias towards sales. A chief revenue officer typically has been brought up the ranks through the sales line. So you'll notice there'll be a VP of sales steps into a chief revenue officer role. Very few CROs are actually coming from a place of go-to-market strategy and brand strategy and that customer experience. So my recommendation is that you're focusing on, if you are going that direction, that you find a CRO. They are out there. They are very hard to find, but they need to be proficient and holistic and non-biased in branded marketing, sales, customer success. And by golly, I sure hope they know what revenue operations is. It is 2021, and that'll be a significant asset to your scaling CPG company.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Brad, you want to take it away next?
Yeah, I'm not sure I can top that answer, but I'm definitely going to try to provide some value here. I feel the exact same way. I mean, now is the most critical time for a company at this stage to ensure that you're breaking down silos and doing literally everything you can to knock the walls down. Your head of sales and head of marketing, they need to run in lockstep to ensure that the go-to-market strategy is unified and supported by a transparent and attainable goal. And everybody needs to know what that is throughout both departments. It's also time to be laser focused on who your ideal customer profile is. And this must include 2 things. It needs to include who your brick and mortar retail ICP is, as well as your direct to customer ICP. And not just because Walmart has 3,500 stores doesn't mean it's the right retailer for you, just because if you get placement there, you can make a lot of money. You have to focus on your brand equity, and both departments need to understand what that looks like. And Mary touched on this earlier, so I need to bring it up again because it is so unbelievably important, is you need to ensure that your manufacturing and operations are ready for scale. It's completely one thing to dial in your sales, marketing, create high efficiencies that have an amazing sales funnel and your sales velocity, and you have a stacked pipeline. But truly, if you can't keep up on that manufacturing side, you're going to have unbelievably disappointed customers and are risking potential brand reputations in the marketplace. Think about when you go to a store and you go to the shelf and you're looking forward to buying something and it's not there. That is devastating. When you go online and it says sold out, that is devastating. So make sure before you scale that you have your operational side of your business dialed in.
Awesome. Thank you. Same question. Let's go Christine next.
Okay. Infrastructure. I guess kind of adding on to what Brad just said. So you've got to build your infrastructure first. I've seen too many companies save marketing as a last ditch effort. And when they finally realize they need it or are ready to make an investment in it, I often see them go one of three paths. So number one, maybe they assign all of their marketing tasks to other team members that are not marketers. They're just kind of giving them an additional responsibility. And this tends to yield very minimal results, and it puts extra stress on those team members. And then you get team members that are not very happy at the end of the day, and they cannot wait for you to hire a marketer. And, you know, maybe they're not putting their best foot forward on the marketing efforts because it's just this extra burden to them. Number two, a company might hire just one or maybe two marketing professionals. You know, usually at this point, when they decide to make this leap, there's been zero marketing infrastructure put into place. There's no plan. And then these new hires are just expected to immediately start producing results and leads and sales. And in order to prove their worth, they're just trying to pump out work to show that they're doing something. But because they have no foundational infrastructure, they're not able to scale any efforts. Any efforts that are kind of working are really on this like shaking sand of a foundation, because there isn't one. So there's really no ability to scale there, and it becomes a big mess. Lastly, often see companies just throw money at you know, a couple different agencies. So maybe like a digital advertising agency or an SEO agency, for example. But the problem here is that the efforts are siloed. There are different companies that are third parties, and they're not talking to each other, and they're maybe not even talking to your company. You guys have no idea what they're doing. And it just doesn't work because it's not happening synergistically and as a cohesive effort. So like you've heard all of us say on this call so far, nobody likes silos, they don't work. So really in all of these scenarios, the strategy just tends to become this spider web of disparate efforts. They don't really play well together, and there's no clear lead qualification in place. The retargeting and nurture strategies just aren't there. They're not well planned out. So we don't get this flywheel model that we were talking about before. And there's maybe not even any KPIs in place. So they don't even know what they're trying to achieve. There's no way to measure it. So instead, it's important to start with the infrastructure, figure all these things out first, build a holistic strategy and a team around that. So if you onboard, say, a head of marketing, allow them the time to build out the infrastructure and to plan all of this out before rushing them for results. And if you hire a firm, make sure it's a holistic firm that's going to work alongside you to plan and implement the right infrastructure for your company's needs, and potentially even help you to eventually hire the right people once you're ready to go up in headcount. So it's got to be holistic and thought out from the foundation up.
Awesome. One thing that stood out for me in that is don't have too many hands in the cookie jar. I feel like it's something we see all the time with these rapidly scaling CPG companies. Okay, I'm sure we have saved the best advice for last. Les, take us home, and then we're going to open it up to a few of these questions.
No pressure, Charlie, on this one. Mary maybe spoke too soon, so cue the music or something. So let's get this going. But no, I'm kind of passionate about this one. You know, if you're at 1 or 2 million, you're doing something right, but don't stop improving. So the messaging must be absolutely clear, and it starts on your packaging. So we have 2 rules for our products. After we name the product, that's another issue. I don't have time to talk about the name, but that's key. But we say our product has to contain 2 statements in addition to the name. What do you use this for? That's pretty basic. Like, what is this stuff? And number 2, why should I buy it? You know, unless you have the new Gizzy that nobody else in the world has, they have other choices. So why should I buy it? So we go through our brands and we make sure, are we answering those 2 basic questions? Kind of like writing an ad. You sit down to write the ad and you work hours to get to a very simple statement. Sometimes simplicity is a difficult thought process. And also the package design has to support the intended use. So 2 times now, when we thought we were simplifying a label design, we inadvertently blurred the usage. The customer didn't relate. And we lost 5% market share per year on established brands. So we learned that lesson, we turned that around, we changed the label, and what happened? It went back up 5% per year with no extra promotion. So the point is that confused buyers just won't buy.
Perfect summary, Les. And as somebody that just recently tried to go buy caulk for my for the little line underneath my bathtub, you would be amazed at how people have missed the mark on telling me what their caulk does. It was confusing. So I'm a pained customer myself. Okay, let's open up to Q&A. Let me pull up the questions here. This first one is for any panelist. Great question. Does anybody have an example of a failed go-to-market in the CPG space that they've either been a part of directly or consulted on?
I'm happy to take this one if nobody else wants to.
I was going to say, nobody's ever failed.
No, we have failed. I was a part of one. This was probably, I believe this was about 5 years ago. And it was my very first foray into the CBD and wellness space. So I worked with a company. They were very early stage. They had raised about $1 million in seed funding and had the most amazing and beautiful product I've ever seen. And they spent so much money on their packaging. They spent so much money on the ingredients that went into it and thought that that's what was going to sell. And we built an amazing website. We didn't. They had built an amazing website. They'd set up a payment processor in Germany or whatever needed to be done at the time before everything was more regulated. And they really forgot to speak about why their product was going to be premium and worth that price point. And you're looking at a very uncharted territory with CBD. Nobody knew really what it did. Everybody thought that it was a derivative of cannabis and got you high, even though it really didn't. And they did nothing from a messaging perspective. Their sales team went out to retailers who weren't buying. On their website, they had products in a brand that nobody had ever heard of that were listed for $100, $200 that were unproven and unspoken about. And before we knew it, this company was completely out of money. And despite my previous agency's best efforts to correct this, eventually it just led to the company dissolving and selling off their license and IP to, one small retailer in Middle America, who now is using it for a face and body wash. But this to me was a huge, huge lesson learned. And this was a big paradigm shift for me going, we need to focus on the product and I can sell anything. And if the product is amazing, I can go into a retailer and convince them that they need it. When in reality, we didn't even have product market fit or understand the category. And so moving on about a year later, I had the opportunity to do this again with another company. And the successes and lessons learned and being able to implement and allow this company to scale to, eventually when I left the company, they had raised a bunch of money, but we were doing about $120 million in annual revenue. We ended up building a vertically integrated manufacturing component. So we always had supply chain and it was an unbelievable experience, but that fail stood with me. And I think about it on a day-to-day basis, whether I'm working in CPG, tangible goods, SaaS, or anything, other ancillary in CPG, is finding that product market fit, dialing in your messaging, and then focused on how you utilize that to curate specific sales opportunities with the customers want to be buying your product.
Awesome, thank you. I knew we had at least one learning lesson over all this.
I've got more, but I'll save everybody.
Well,
I want to get.
We certainly have one if we got time for that. But we came out with, for years we tried to put a tub tile caulking in the market, and there's a very, very dominant player, and we were not successful. So part of that lack of success was this misalignment in marketing and sales. So I won't go into that whole thing, but that's already been kind of queued up. So we finally came out with one that, we started to get really great placement in the market, and so much more successful. But what we learned was we actually confused our buyers with the name. So kitchen bath tub tile caulk usually comes with a squeeze tube. Began getting feedback that even the store clerks thought it was a cleaner. They thought it was toothpaste. There was all kinds of stuff. So so now you can get better research cheaper, right? So we went to a crowdsourcer on the name. Now this name we had picked was the top of a focus group, 2 focus groups. So we thought pretty safe. We actually went to a crowdsourcing deal for less than $2,000. We submitted 400 possible names, came out with a top name, just the name change, nothing else. Increased sales 40%.
Wow.
Is huge.
Man, that's an awesome story. Thank you for sharing. Okay, I know we're running short on time. I want to make sure we get as many of these questions answered as possible. Here's one that just came in. I think this is probably a good one for Christine. Any advice on launching a new CPG brand on Amazon that doesn't have any brand awareness yet? Specifically, how do you go about that review process, gathering reviews without being flagged in the Amazon system for fake reviews? Any thoughts on that, Christine, or any panelist?
Yeah, so the number one answer is not to get fake reviews, right? So you want them to be authentic. So how do you really push that authentic sale and review when you don't really have that awareness yet? So part of that is being able to offer maybe a nice discount in exchange for advocacy. So basically you're giving them, a highly discounted product. They should still be purchasing it through Amazon. And then you're asking for their honest feedback afterwards. So in the form of an Amazon review. So it's not just being like, hey, leave me a review, or paying people for reviews. You're actually getting authentic views. But of course you're going to need to build that first, right? You need to build that following and pool of people that are going to be able to do that for you. So that might be in the way of building up your email list and sending out, this kind of discount for advocacy there. It might be building this through your Instagram followers. I know Mary and Brad have a few things they might like to add to this as well.
Yeah, we just ordered little bath bombs that have the Avengers characters inside of them, and my son is crazy about them. And it's a newer brand. It's just 2 sisters that came up with this company, and they sell these products on Amazon. They're quite wonderful. But in the packaging, so they're a newer brand. In the packaging on the inside of the box, when you flip it up, it has a little bit about their brand story, and it just very openly, transparently says, like, we're just 2 sisters that wanted to start a company. We're a little shop, and we value you highly purchasing our product. This would really help us. If you would please go online, help support our brand, go online, leave a review. If you've loved this product, if you don't, send us an email here. We'll take the feedback directly and we'll help you on your journey, whatever it is. So that could be a way too, just as a new brand, embed something in your packaging that tells a little bit about that story, or find a way to do that. I think you can also do that through your social media, on your website, however you're marketing yourself. People love a champion story, and they love to help people out. We as humans want to help each other. So I think if you're just transparent on that, some people will align with that brand story. I'm not sure if this example is 100% aligned with what you're hoping for, but I hope there's a nugget you can take away.
Yeah, like Les said earlier, be real, be honest, don't be phony.
That is all the time we have. I don't want to dive into another question just because we only have 90 seconds left. Again, if your question was not answered today, feel free to shoot it over to info@House of Revenue, and either myself or Mary will answer or point you in the right direction to the best person to answer your question. Thank you again for joining us for our panel discussion. I've had a ton of fun. Thank you to each one of our panelists. I hope everyone has a tremendous rest of Denver Startup Week.
All right, thank you.